How's it going, Mathaholics? Today we're going to work on completing the square, but before we get into that, like I say at the start of every single video, once we get to 150 subscribers, we're going to give away 3 free Cane's gift cards. So if you like Cane's and you want to get some free chicken, hit that subscribe button and hopefully you become one of our lucky winners. Alright, so factoring the square. I promise that after this video, you'll for sure understand how to finally factor the square. So there's a couple things that we need to know. Let's say this question was written negative 12x plus x squared plus 11. So technically, this right here would be the B, this would be the A, and this would be the C. Now, why do I say that? And the reason I say that is because a lot of the times when we see problems that ask us to complete the square, they are written in ways that we're not really accustomed to seeing. So always remember that the term with the exponent is going to be your A term. The one with just an x is going to be the B term, and the one the one that's just a constant is going to be your C term. All right. And now I remember this in a little bit of a cliche way. I remember that B wants to be with its x, and then I remember that A is just a square. I know it's stupid, but it helps me remember it. And then C can't have anything because it starts with the C, and so this is the phrase can't have anything. It can't have an x, can't have an exponent. So I don't know if you need help remembering your A, B, and C in math, but in case you did need help, that's how I remember it. So how do we complete the square? So let's set this equal to 0. And the first thing we want to do is, since we know this is our B right here, we want to divide B in half. Negative 12x divided by 2 is going to be 6x. Now we're going to rewrite what we have up here already. X squared minus 12x plus, I'm going to leave a little space here, and you'll see exactly why we're writing it like this for a second. You might be thinking, wait a minute, I thought you just said we're going to divide B in half. Well, yes, that is exactly what we're doing. So we divide negative 12 in half. What does that give us? Negative 6. However, you know how there's a little blank right here? That almost gets to go in the blank. We need to square this. So negative 6 squared is going to give us 36. Okay? Now, just as a little recap, if you got lost there, all we did was divide our B in half. That's where we got the negative 6. And then we squared it right over here. We got our 36, which we put it up here. And that is just a little quick explanation of what we just did. All right, so now that we have that, let me erase this so we have more room to work. All we're going to do now is simplify a little bit. So we have x squared minus 12x plus 36. That's going to stay exactly how it is. Now, you know how when we first learned to solve for an equation, I'm just going to make up a problem, 2x equals 4. How would you go about solving for x? Well, I'm sure you would divide by 2, and then what would you do? You'd divide by 2 on this side as well, right? And why is that? Because whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Those are just the rules of math. So that is exactly what we're going to do now. You know how we just found that 36? In order for us to not basically have pulled this 36 out of thin air, we have to do the exact same thing to the other side. Except this time we're going to subtract 36. Now, this is not necessarily confusing, but it's different than what we've always done. And the example I just showed you up here, it would make sense for you to put minus 36 here, right? However, I'm only telling you the way to not do it so you remember what's not right to do, okay? So do not put your negative 36 over on this side. You're just going to put it right next to your 11. Minus 36 right there. All right? I did not mean to put that little line there. Perfect. So now we have x squared minus 12x plus 36 right here. And now you know how I said in order to go from this step to this step, all we have to do is simplify? Well, that is exactly what we're doing now. We have rewritten this to be this, which is the exact same thing. And now we just have to do 11 minus 36. And that's going to give us negative 25. Then remember, we have to set it all equal to 0 still. Okay, so now what do? We see an x squared minus 12x plus 6. We know that we need to factor something because it's math, right? So what do we do to factor this? Well, if you don't remember how to factor, we do have a video on that. But in case you do remember, it's just x minus 6 and x minus 6. Now we can't forget our minus 25 equals 0. Alrighty, so now what do? Same thing, going back to that little example, if I give you 12x equals, I don't know, 48, you divide by 12, divide by 12, that way you would get your answer. So why do I say that once again? Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, no matter what. So now we're just going to add 25 to both sides. Okay, pretty easy so far. So now we have x minus 6 equals 25. All right, so what is another way of writing x minus 6 and x minus 6? In fact, it's a little bit of a fancier way, but it'll actually make this problem a bit easier for us to solve. X minus 6, or anything really that is the exact same thing, multiplied with itself, it's just going to be that squared. So I'm going to rewrite this as x minus 6 squared equals 25. Now, why do I bother doing that? Well, I guarantee if you rewrite this to the way I just wrote it down here, it's going to make the rest of the problem a lot easier for you. So how do I solve the rest of this? All I have to do now is square root both sides. So I'm going to put x minus 6 squared under my radical equals square root of 25. All right, now here's a little trick I want you to remember for however long you need to remember this, basically. If you have x minus 6 squared, if you have x minus 3, x minus 4, x whatever, if you're taking the square root, how we're doing in this case, everything's going to go away, basically. So this is going to turn into simply just an x minus 6. Now this would be the case if you have x minus 3 squared under the radical. We could replace that 3 with a 7, 100, a million, a 10, whatever. That's going to be the case. I just want you to remember that because when you have a test on this, I don't want you to say, oh, I don't know what to do with squaring x minus 6 squared, square rooting. So I'm just throwing that out there as a little bit of extra knowledge for you. And now if we remember our square roots, square root of 25 is just plus or minus 5. And we're almost done with the problem. And in fact, there's nothing that we've done that's actually hard. It's just remembering the steps. So x minus 6 equals plus or minus 5. What do we do with that? Well, we can actually do a couple things, and I think this is actually the easiest thing to do. So what does plus or minus mean? That means that it can be a positive 5 or negative 5. So in fact, we have to write two equations for it. So the first one's going to equal just a positive 5. I'm going to write my other one over here, negative 5. Okay, so how do I solve it now? Remember, just like I've said maybe 2 or 3 times in this video already, if I give you a 6x equals 18, what do? Divide, divide. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Exactly. So just in case you weren't getting the hint already, I'm going to do the exact same thing now. X minus 6 equals 5, plus 6 here, plus 6. This goes away. X equals what's 5 plus 6. There we go. Now we have x equals 11. And do we put that on our paper and say we're done? No, unfortunately. But fortunately, the last thing we need to do to get our full credit is also very simple. X minus 6 equals negative 5. How do I solve that? All right, we want to solve for x, so we need to get rid of what's hindering us from having x by itself. Add 6, and that just gives us x equals 1. And that is it. I hope my long drawn out explanation actually had a purpose to it and that you understood this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I hope you found math a little bit easier today than you did yesterday. Thank you and have a great day.